So this is going to be Lena's day 1 sampling.
Yes.
And I would remind us, let me make sure you got everything running here. I would remind us that what the rules of this engagement are, that you don't have to tell us about anything. If you would prefer not to tell us about something, you should say, I don't want to talk about this, and we will respect that. But if you say you're willing to talk about it, then we should be able to ask anything that we want about that experience. And you can change your mind about that. You should feel like you're the controlling interest in this deal. Anything else I should be saying as far as the preamble is concerned?
I don't think so.
And any questions or comments or whatever that you would make about the procedure? This is going to be your first crack at it.
Yes, so a suggestion that I realized when I wore the thing, when the beep goes off, it's just like a long beep till you reset it.
Yeah.
I realize it's hard for me to hold on to the experience with the long beep. Like maybe if it was like a 4-second beep rather than like a continuous beep, because then I have to I gotta go turn it off because I can't think of the beep in my ear. That was like the one thing that I realized, that the beep can be distracting sometimes. But like maybe like a 4-second beep, so then I know, okay, all right, that's the beep for sure. You'll get it at 4 seconds, and then it's over on its own, and then I can go to recording or focus on recording.
I think there are some people for whom, like you, think that a shorter beep would be better. We could talk about why it is a longer beep. There's historical reasons and practical reasons and whatever for that. But and I think that it could be that you'll get better at that. That as you get more experience, then you'll get more able to filter out the beep. The main purpose of the long beep is that we want you to we want to force you, so to speak, to get into action. If you know the beep is going to come, it's easy to just, I'm just going to keep on going and I don't have to do anything about it. But this requires you to take some action in the direction of reporting. And I think in general that's a good idea. It might not be a good idea for you, and we have ways of getting around that, not with this particular beeper, so we can try, sorry about that, we can try other methods if we have to, but they have disadvantages as well. So I would say, well, let's stick with this for the moment, for a day or two, and see whether that improves. We hear your pain, let's put it that way, but let's not change it right at the moment. Maybe down the road.
I mean that's essentially kind of what I had to do, is filter it out. But we could keep it the way it is and see how it goes.
Okay. In the history of things, the length of the requirement that you stop the beep is how the randomization was done. Before computers were this beep is a computer in your hand basically, but when I started this 40 years ago, there weren't computers even on tables hardly, let alone in your hand. And so
I wonder if there's like an app that can simulate.
I've got one of those too, but that's also
that's a problem. You've thought it all.
There's lots of.
They're great suggestions. You're right, and we do have a method for a short beep that stops itself, and we're flexible about that. But I do think you give this a couple more days and
give it, and you'll get used to the beeping and all that stuff. Okay, perfect.
So the end of this story is we don't want you to pretend that you're getting used to it. If you do get used to it, that's great. But if it still continues to be a problem, let's fix it.
Yes.
The object is not to sweep something under the rug, anything under the rug, including, well, I still can't deal with this beep deal. If a couple of days from now we're still doing that, then we can do other ways which have other disadvantages.
Okay. Well, if it's distracting me and for some reason I can't filter it out, then I'll tell you guys
we
on the next
know about
round.
that.
Good.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Then I say we should go for beep one.
Beep
and
one.
we're going to alternate back and forth?
I think you should start.
Me, you.
Yeah.
Number one.
Yes. Number one.
And I would say about our interviewing procedure, I guess, we're both trying to get the same thing, or all of us hopefully trying to get the same thing. We would like to develop a joint understanding of your experience I will start the interview process on this beep, and if Alec doesn't understand my question or doesn't understand your answer, or both or neither, or has additional questions or something, she can chime in, and then the second beep will do it the other way around, so it's like 2 against 1, which is not exactly fair, but that's the,
I'm ready to be cross-examined.
okay,
I'm on the stand.
number 1.
Okay, do I tell you start?
Yes.
Okay, so in my first inner experience, do I say what I was doing, or just kind of give you whatever I want to say?
We were interested in what your experience was.
Okay.
If that requires telling us what you were doing, so we can understand what your experience was, then you
Okay.
gotta tell us.
Okay, so I was on the toilet, and I was looking at my phone, and one of my cousins made a post on her Facebook about one of those questionnaires where one question was which out of her siblings is the smartest, and her answer was we are all smart. And I kind of like went into this mental tangent about siblings, and I don't know that it was exactly of my voice specifically, but it felt like I was going into like concentrating on the meaning of my relationship with my brother, my sibling, and genetics, and how he got what he got out of our parents, I got what I got out of my parents, and how do those genetic factors play a part in how we're different and how we're the same, and like who picks the lucky straw, and I noticed that kind of made me feel a little uncomfortable, like kind of comparing myself to my brother like that, and thinking about how you determine who's more intelligent from the other, because I could say my brother is 20 times more intelligent than I am when it comes to certain things, and then on the other side of life I'm more intelligent, so it's like hard to be exact with who has the more higher supreme genes. And I don't know, I went on this crazy tangent. And I noticed that when the beep went off, I was like so focused on it that I even forgot I had the beeper, which is probably like good for you guys.
Okay.
So I was like, oh, I gotta write that down. So I wrote it down. I noticed that when I went back into thinking of the experience, I realized like I kind of was feeling like generally uncomfortable, and maybe like a little bit of anxiety. And I thought like, oh, maybe like I was feeling like a little anxious because I was driving to here, and I had to take the Las Vegas Boulevard, which was a terrible idea because it was more time, more traffic, and I almost rear-ended somebody. And that like jolted my heart rate a little bit, and I think maybe that anxiety just kind of stuck with me when I went to my first class. So that was my first experience. That's what I reported. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a long story, I guess I would say. So and I'm first off, I want to understand what the story was. So you're on the toilet, the reading a Facebook post,
Yeah.
and the Facebook post triggers this. Well, a Facebook post is about who's the smarter of your siblings or something like that,
Yeah.
and then you go into this reverie or whatever about that,
Yeah.
and somewhere in there the beep comes. Is that right?
Yeah.
So it might be useful for us to use this kind of a mnemonic or something like that. So if this is time marching on, I've walked into the bathroom, I'm sitting down in the toilet, I'm reading Facebook, this is time going this way, and the beep happens right here. And the beep continues until you turn it off, you stop the beep, here's the beep, and then the beep stops, and then time continues on. So the moment that we're interested in mostly is this moment right here, right?
Yeah.
1 microsecond just before the beep occurs. And I'm gathering it's a fact of the universe that I'm on the toilet, but that's not part of my experience at the moment. It's true that I'm there, but I'm not attending to that in whatever, that's background or whatever. And then there's the reverie, and that's my word, not your word, so I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that, but the contemplation of the genes and family and whatever, that's somewhere out here. And then the beep happens, and it causes you to focus back onto here. And that's So this is what we're aiming at. So right there, are you still in this contemplation mode? Is that still ongoing, or has the contemplation mode sort of ended in favor of feeling uncomfortable and anxious? And I'm not sure I understood the uncomfortable and anxious. Was that back out here somewhere? I had a close call, and the anxiety might still be through this
I
whole thing?
noticed the anxiety after the beep. And so like I realized the beep came and it pulled me out of my reverie, as you said. And I turned off the beep and I started immediately writing about that tangent I was in. And then I realized after recording my tangent that, oh, I'm feeling like a little anxious right now. I'm feeling a little, maybe I should write that I was a little anxious. You know?
So
it
on
came
the
after.
on the timeline here,
Yeah.
the beep comes here.
Yeah.
I write about the beep, and then I feel anxious out here somewhere?
Yes.
Is that right?
Somewhere after the beep, yes.
Okay,
I
so
was
that's
feeling
after the
anxious.
beep.
Yeah.
This is the moment that we're interested in right here, and
Yeah.
at that moment, now I'm gathering, I wasn't feeling
I was
anxious.
not noticing anxiety yet.
There may have been anxiety process going on in my body that started clear back over here, and
Right.
my adrenal glands are doing whatever they do, or
Mhm.
whatever, but at this particular moment, I wasn't paying attention to that.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
right?
I wasn't
Okay.
focused on that.
So, at the, excuse me, at the moment of the beep,
Mhm.
is the tangent is going on? So the tangent has started here, I'm
Mhm.
tangenting, whatever that means.
Yeah.
I'm considering my parents and my brother and this
All the
thing, and
things.
all that stuff is going on, and that's caught in flight by the beep?
Yes, the beep, like, when the beep happened, it pulled me out of it. I feel like if the beep didn't occur, I would have continued in that for whatever amount of time until I
Okay.
had to get off the toilet.
So the tangent,
Yeah.
so we're tangenting, I guess, is
We're
that
tangenting now.
at that
Mhm.
moment.
Mhm.
So now I'm gathering that the tangent itself took some number of seconds or maybe even minutes or something like that. A
Yeah.
fairly long time to think about all the things that you talked about. It could be
It's
this
weird
and it
that
could
you
be
say
that.
that, because you would think that with all the things I wrote, that took a lot of time to think of all that, but I feel like it was maybe at best 30 seconds.
All right. 30 seconds is a lifetime as far as
Okay.
experience is concerned. A lot of stuff
Okay.
can happen in 30 seconds.
Okay, that's true. All right.
And so we want to be even more precise than the 30 seconds.
Okay.
So at this moment,
Mhm.
that the beep occurs as best we can, and we're not going to be perfect about it, but
Mhm.
as best we can be, what of this tangent is in your experience? Or maybe it's not even the tangent. So what is in your experience right then? The tangent is certainly in the vicinity, and it was before and after, and maybe right then too.
Mhm.
But it's possible that right at that moment, I was hearing the wind outside or the jet flying over or whatever.
Mm. Mhm.
I'm not trying to talk you out of the tangent, I'm
Right,
just
right,
trying to,
right. See the surrounding, I guess. I guess outside of that, I was focused on the other people coming into the bathroom. I was using the restroom at UNLV, and maybe I, could hear the sounds of others washing their hands and.
so
That was the background.
I think I may have misled you with my question.
Okay.
I'm not asking you
Mhm.
to report about the other things that are going on.
Okay.
What unless they are in your experience.
Okay.
What I was trying to do was to acknowledge that experience comes and goes. So I could be thinking about the genetics, and then I hear the guy with the woman at the sink, and then I think about what my brother is swearing this, and then I hear the toilet over there flush, and then
Mm.
so all I wanted to say was that it's not that once we started this, it has to
Mhm.
be that until the end. But I wasn't saying I need a complete catalog of all sensory
Got
aspects
it,
or whatever.
okay. Sorry, ask me again, maybe I just need to hear.
What
the
I,
question.
so what I'm trying to do here is to help us zero in on what was in your experience right here at this particular moment.
Mhm.
And so far, the account of the tangent is a quite varied thing. There's mother and brother and father and genetics and whatever.
Yeah.
And those all could have been present, all simultaneously right at the moment of the beat.
Yeah.
Or it could be that I was thinking about my brother and being smart that way and me being smart this way.
Mhm.
What kind of a question is that? And
Mhm.
all the, I'm trying to zero us in on this particular moment.
Okay.
And this is the first sampling day, and we told you on the 0th sampling day that we didn't expect you to be very good at that, because I think what's happening right now is we're contracting your notion of what was happening at the moment, down the time frame down to much more precise than you thought it was going to be. And that happens almost every time, maybe even every time. Nobody realizes how precise we want you to be. And it takes this kind of practice
To get that
to get
precise.
there.
So if I truly go into that moment again and think about exactly my experience just before the beep, what I could recall is my sensing of my own self-evaluation in compared to my brother.
So at the moment, now that
Yeah.
as best we can do,
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
zoom in,
Yeah.
I'm focused more on myself.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
And what I am like,
Yeah.
and it's in the context of how that compares to my brother or whatever, but mostly about myself.
Yes, and how much of myself is controlled by what my genes are from my parents, and how much of myself is something that I developed from just experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how does that present itself to you?
The experience aspect, I kind of see where I've led up to in this point in my life and the choices I've made. And I could see how my experiences and choices dictated that exact moment of me looking back, and then seeing the similarities between myself and my parents and relating that to also why I make certain choices, and seeing that also in my brother, how he's in the same way have done the same thing, but he's made obviously much different choices in life, and he's a different person, and he got different aspects of our lineage than I did, and just I was comparing that to him. Yeah.
So throughout that paragraph, you
Yes.
use the word see. I see this and I see that.
Yeah.
The word see is a
Yes.
fairly ambiguous word,
Yes.
so I want to make sure that I understand what that.
Visualize.
So you do mean visualize?
Yeah, I'm visualizing it. It's like a vision.
This is a visual experience.
Yeah.
And so right at the moment of the beep, what do you see? And I'm not trying to talk you into this being a visual
Okay.
experience.
No, that's a good question, actually. It's kind of exciting. I kind of see it like a play. Yeah, kind of like my brother is reenacting the things that I'm thinking. And it's like I can see his movements, and it feels like, like when you take a picture of somebody moving and then they're like the light drags or lags, like I'm visualizing him moving around like that as I'm thinking about him and his life experience. And then when I see myself, I don't see myself like that. I see myself as more like when I think of myself, I see myself very still. I don't see myself moving around like that when I visualize the scene of what I'm thinking.
So do I understand that and now we're going to zero in on this time frame right here, that a little bit before the beep I had been visualizing my brother, and he's moving, swirling,
Yeah.
lighty, whatever.
Yeah.
But that's sort of over with, and now I see myself, but I'm not swirling, and that gets
Yeah.
caught in the moment of the beep, or are both of those simultaneous at the moment of the beep? Or not?
It's like I was in that moment just before the beep happened. Like I was deep in that visualization of asking myself these questions, and then as I'm asking myself these questions, I'm in this visual of seeing how my brother is represented to me through whatever it is I'm saying. And then when I reflect on myself in that same way, it's like it's not happening linearly, like as you're saying. I feel like it's happening layered
Okay.
kind of experience. Like maybe I'm having, like the visual is happening on top of the thoughts and the questions. So it's like they're both happening at the same time. I'm narrating the visual that I'm seeing in my
Okay.
mind. Yeah.
And so at the moment of the beep, as
Yeah.
best we can reconstruct
Yes.
at this particular moment,
Yeah.
I am visualizing this scene, and I have some narration involved
Yeah.
about the scene. And the visualization involves both my brother, light moving
Yeah, weird
around
wisping
in some
around
weird,
light. Yeah,
weirdy
I
way.
don't know where that came from. That's just how I saw it. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and myself being still,
Still, yeah.
and those are all seem simultaneous.
Yeah, like it's all happening stacked on top of each other.
Okay,
Yeah.
and the narration portion, is that more prominent, less prominent, equally prominent than the visual
I
portion?
think more on the prominent side, and the visual is kind of more background to the thought.
And by more, do you mean 60-40 or 90-10 or
I'd say
99-1?
60-40.
So both are fairly prominent?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the narration more
both are
prominent?
fairly prominent, with the narration being slightly more stronger, slightly
Okay.
more obvious.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about the narration. What exactly do you mean by the narration?
Well, what I hear is my voice, and I hear myself, my talking, and my questions, and my contemplation, and yeah, that's what I hear.
And what exactly is your voice saying at the moment of the
Kind of what I wrote down, like just really, like it takes some extra thought to actually form the question, but like especially when I have to write it down, I have to really think about it. But the narration starts out as a feeling, maybe, about what I'm experiencing, and then I analyze the feeling really quickly, and then I'll start questioning the feeling, kind of, if that makes sense. And that's how I develop questions to myself about whatever got pushed. So like I got pushed by reading that one question on Facebook, and that created a feeling, and then I focused on that feeling, and then I put a microscope on that feeling, and then all these questions came out of that one feeling. Does that make sense?
So the interesting thing, I guess, for me, Ella can speak to her interests as well, but the interesting thing to me is what the details of these things are. So a feeling followed by a microscope followed by a series of questions is, I would say, I want to understand what that's like. So do we mean sequentially, like first there was a feeling, and then there was an analysis, and then some questions came, and the feeling was a emotional kind of a thing, and then there was the microscope, which is an attentional kind of a thing, and then there's the word kind of a thing, or
it always feels like it's all happening at once, and then like it's wrapped on itself, like it's like a structure that has no level, no like one thing here, one thing here, one thing here. It's just kind of like, I don't know, I'm relating it to this because I'm learning about it, and I'm sure you guys know, but you know, proteins that create their secondary, tertiary, quaternary structures, and they kind of fold on themselves, and they create these weird shapes. Like that's how it feels. Like that's how that moment felt. And then I just kind of like, when you focus on whatever it is first, if it's the feeling first, you kind of open that part up, and then you're now in that one part, and now next thing you know, I put my attention or my inner microscope on whatever that feeling is that stuck out. Like maybe there was like 10 other feelings in that, but I just decided to pick that one feeling for whatever reason, I don't know. Like that's more subconscious, I think. And then I just hyper-focused right there.
so the challenging and interesting and fascinating thing about these conversations is we don't know what the heck you're talking about.
Okay.
And we suspect that you know something about what you're talking about,
Yeah.
but don't yet know how to put it into words in a way that
Right.
the outside world can understand, because
Exactly.
you haven't been forced to do this by this kind of a
It's not
procedure.
common, yeah.
So we are expecting us to be not very good at asking the questions, and you to be not very good at answering them, and that's why we have to do this more than one time. So the object of this interview, this day that we're spending together, is in part to try to figure out what your experience was at the moment of this particular beep, and also in part to, I guess, plow the soil so that the
Yeah.
next time we do this, we're better at it.
Yeah.
And so what I would say about this beep is that we started out with a pretty long timeline here,
Mhm.
and then we're doing the best we can now to zero in on the moment that we're trying to get us to be interested
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
But you weren't prepared to pay attention to that at the moment of the beep
Mhm.
because you didn't understand how precise our moment was.
Mhm.
And that's the way the first day always is. This is not a
Okay.
failing of yours, it's
Mhm.
not a failing of ours. It
Mhm.
is, if you want to get it, which we do, if one wants to get a high fidelity view, we have to go through this kind of thing.
Got it.
So I would say we should sort of go on to the next beep and
Yeah.
let Alec ask about that.
Okay.
Not to say that we have completely understood this beep, which we haven't,
Mhm.
but we maybe have understood it to the place that you're capable of telling us about it because you weren't ready to look for it at the moment of the beep. So we're trying to corral ourselves around your experience. And what I hope that I have conveyed, what I have tried to convey is that I'm interested in all of the aspects of your experience. I'm interested in the feeling part and the narration part and the focusing part and the imaging part and the weird part and the toilet part and the whatever, all that stuff is all on, none of it's off limits. I mean, I have tried to say I'm interested in any of that, whatever your experience happens to have singled out or multipled out or whatever happens to have focused on when the beep occurred.
Okay. All right. I think I kind of understand what you're saying in terms of getting down to the wire.
Yeah.
I think I just was very caught in a tangent and didn't know how to
Yeah.
record that.
And so the thing about this interview, which I think is a fairly honest thing about this interview, is we neither of us know what the other guy's talking about. I don't know exactly what you're talking about. You don't know exactly what I'm talking about. We take that seriously. I think most of the time people just presume that they know what the other guy's talking about and go happily on their way and never really understand what the other guy was talking about or whatever. We take it seriously and try to have structured a situation where we can sort of gently or gradually or whatever get better at it, maybe, maybe not. You know, this situation might not work for you. Maybe the beep really does destroy things in an essential way for you, and this process is not going to be effective for you. That would be fine with us. We don't want to pretend that it's a good process when it's not a good process.
Okay. Perfect.
So I think we should go on to beep number
Beep
two,
two.
unless you've got questions or comments or whatever.
No, I have no questions. I can go on to beep number 2. Not sure if I did the exact moment in the way before, but
That's
maybe
day
we
one.
can get in there together.
So the
yeah.
purpose of, let me say one more thing about
Yeah.
that. The purpose of our conversation is for you to understand the kinds of questions that we might ask.
Yeah.
And that will probably make it easier for you to pay attention to what's going on in your experience
Yeah.
tomorrow or whenever we sample again.
Okay.
Next time.
Right.
Perfect. Is it useful that I tell you what I was doing before the beep happened, like where I was, or does that not really matter in terms of the beep itself?
I think the answer is it depends. You know, we really are interested specifically in the experience, but some people like to say, here's where I was, and then get into the experience. Or sometimes the experience makes no sense unless we understand I'm doing math homework or something, you know, but it's really, there's no right or wrong way to do this.
Okay.
And we consider everything you say to be a draft, right? A first draft, a second draft. We want you to be able to revise and retract and say, I said that, but I don't really mean that
Yeah.
at any point. So we're not
Got it.
holding you to anything you say or particularly your initial salvo of it.
Okay.
So whatever feels,
Okay.
And I agree entirely with that, and I would say one more thing about it, and that is,
Yeah.
we don't want you to try to fit our rules.
Right.
We want you to tell us about your experience in whatever way is the best way to tell us about your experience, and we don't presume to know what that is.
Got it. Okay, well, so for the beep number 2, I was in class, and we were learning about action potentials. And right at the time of the beep, right at the time of the beep, we were about 10 seconds into watching a video about action potentials. And just before the beep occurred, there was something about one of the refractory periods. When the action potential occurs, it can't go back, can't go backwards, can't reverse itself. And I had a thought that said, oh, like I related that to life, like we can't travel back in time, we can't go back on ourselves, and once we make an action, it sees itself through and creates other actions elsewhere, or instinct, or connections elsewhere. So just trying to make that connection so that I could remember what I was learning. And that's where the beep occurred. I don't know what else to say.
No, perfect.
Okay.
So maybe we'll use our timeline again.
Okay.
So I'm in class. We've been talking about action potentials. That's all outside, been going on before the beep. Is that right?
Yes.
And at this particular moment, right at the moment of the beep, what exactly is in your experience?
I'm having an inward experience about understanding action potentials, about how at that specific time of the beep, like just seconds before the beep occurred, it was said that in an action potential, it can't go back, like can't reverse itself. Once the action potential occurs, it goes forward and on to other neurons or whatever. And when I heard that, I went into this, I guess again, another visualization of seeing life happen going forward, not seeing, like just making this connection of we can't go back in time kind of thing. And that's like where I was sitting in that moment in terms of a thought and hearing that inner narrative.
Okay. And as best we can say, is it we can't go back in life, we only move forward, is that what's interrupted by the beep?
Yes, so the beep interrupts that specific moment of hearing that.
Okay. And so we've newly discovered the precision of the moment of the beep, but as best we can say, I'm having some of my own kind of thought about can't go back in time.
Yeah.
And does that mean that the video is no longer in my experience at all? Like I'm probably facing it, but I'm no longer paying attention to that?
Yes. So when the beep occurred, I put the video on background and I wrote this down real quick so that I had the experience. And just before the beep occurred, I was like in that thought, not focused on the video necessarily, more focused on just making that connection of not going back.
Okay. So as best we can say, I've been watching the video, and at the moment of the beep now I'm kind of into my own thing about we can't go back in life, we can only go forward, and this is like refractory periods or whatever.
Exactly.
I don't know anything about neurons.
Yeah.
Okay. And so how exactly does that connection you're making, how does that present itself to you?
It's kind of like how as in what does it look like inside, or how as in like what does it feel like when it starts to present itself? Like
that's a great question.
Yeah.
If you felt something, we'd want to know what you felt. If it looked like something and you saw something, we'd want to know what you saw. And you don't always have to, there doesn't always have to be a visualization aspect, there doesn't always have to be a feeling. Maybe you just somehow are thinking this and there's no pictures and there's no words and I'm just somehow thinking it.
I would say that I'm very visual, so I always have some sort of visualization playing out. And in that moment, it's kind of like what I was trying to explain to him. I see like that same wispy light thingy, like playing out, like there's movement, action of whatever thoughts I'm having as if I'm playing the scenario out, but it's presenting itself as like these really fast-moving wispy lights or something.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like, you know, when you take a picture and somebody's moving. That's what I'm visualizing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm putting, on top of that visualization, I'm putting words and my own inner voice onto that. And they're both happening together at the same time.
Okay.
And, you know, sometimes before that I go into a visual experience or a inner dialogue about it, it seems like, now that I'm really thinking about it, it starts as a feeling, like a sensation, like an occurrence just happens, and something just sort of clicks inside, and I make a connection somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
and then I go in on that connection, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
And it is kind of like a sensation of thought, but it is maybe slightly physical because
Mm-hmm.
it has to draw my attention to it. If there is a sensation there, like I have to feel something to take my mind to that specific one little thing, especially if we're taking it down to the wire.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So,
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
sort of.
okay.
Okay.
If we were talking in the library, I would say yeah, and when we're talking in here, it's hard to say. Does that
Okay.
does any of it make sense?
Okay.
And so I'm accepting that theory about you might be totally accurate or maybe
Okay.
totally inaccurate. We know that people
Mhm.
don't always know their inner experience very well, even though they might feel like they really do.
Mm-hmm.
And so setting aside whether you're a person who feels first and then visualizes, at this particular moment, at beep number 2, when you're in class,
Mm-hmm.
do I see something in my imagination?
Yes.
And what exactly do I see?
Like the lights, the enactment of what I'm thinking, of what I'm sensing or what I'm feeling or whatever connection I make, anything that I'm sensing or
The
visually.
wispy light thing?
Yeah.
And is it, so in the last beep it was like the wispy lights with my brother moving.
Yeah.
Is this something specific?
Yeah, so it's more not so much a figure of a person I know, it's just multiple little things moving. And I'm just giving whatever those things that are moving a name and a title and a role. And then I'm playing it out by
Mhm.
watching the visualization move around, and then I put a dialogue on it.
Okay.
It's like creating my own play, kind of. Like I'm creating my
And
own.
as best you can say, at the moment just before this beep,
Yeah.
are you into one particular thing or a couple particular things?
I would say it seems that I'm very focused on one particular thing. Like I get
Mhm.
very focused on one thing. I don't necessarily always see the whole thing. I don't know if that makes sense.
And at the moment of this beep, can you say what that thing is? Like, am I into the concept of life or mistakes or something? Like, I don't.
Well, in relation to the connections and all that, maybe I was, drawing a connection in on that one thing being that, I myself can't go back in time. I myself cannot reverse decisions or experiences, and not only is that a fact about life, but it plays itself in the little tiny aspects of life. Like, what's micro inside of me is also doing the same thing outside of me in a macro version.
Mhm.
Like we're just sort of replicating all the little weird things inside of us, and we do it in some way on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. And I guess I did point it down to myself. Like that thing that I focused on was probably a representation of me realizing I can't go back in time either.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does that mean that there's sort of a lot of wispy lights going around, and
Yeah.
I was zeroed in on one of these wispy lights,
Yeah.
which I somehow recognize as me not being able to go back in time?
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
But if, I'm not trying to talk you into this, I'm
No,
trying to
no, no,
understand what
it's
you're
just-
saying.
I'm working on it with you guys.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
That's
I'm like, whoa, okay,
great.
that's what I was
And if we had a photograph of these wispy lights,
Yeah.
which obviously is not possible, would this look like you, or would it just somehow this wispy light is
Yeah.
me-ish?
It's like the lights don't have a face unless I put a face there. It's like they don't have any assigned role until I assign a role. And so when I see myself, and it's funny, I saw myself in experience one the same way, so I'm thinking this is how I see myself because I'm seeing it in experience too. I see myself, I see everything else is moving wispy white, like lights everywhere. And then I see myself as this, like, still thing. It's very still. It's not moving around. It's not white light thing. It's like a still, like, kind of like a just sitting block of sitting. I don't know.
So there's a visual stillness
Yes.
that's in the midst of a wispy, moving light.
Yes. Kind of like a lighthouse in the middle of an ocean feeling. It's like I am this still thing, and then everything else is just blah, 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 everywhere.
And does this still thing have a shape, like a rectangle or a circle?
Yeah,
or
it's like a big, I guess the shape of a lighthouse, but it's like a shadow. It's the reflection of it. It's not, like I don't see the color. I don't see the definition. I don't see the character traits. I just see this block shadow still maybe like shaped like this.
Okay. And that I'm gathering is sort of more like the absence of wispy lights than it is the presence of a object or a body, or is that true?
Say that again?
I'm trying to understand whether what you're saying is, I see all these wispy lights, but there's a rectangular or this shape region that doesn't have wispy lights.
No, yeah.
In which case, it's not that I see something that's like this, it's just like, well, there's all these wispy lights, except there aren't any wispy lights here.
Right, that thing is just standing on its own. The wispy lights are like kind of in the background of it, or maybe it's in the foreground, but that thing is just.
And is that a thing I see,
Mhm.
or is that the absence of wispy lights in that shape?
A thing I see, because the wispy lights are there with it, and in particularly experience too. It was like the block, that thing, the shadow, whatever you want to call it, was prominent there, and then the wispy lights were kind of around it. It's like exactly in the same way as if a lighthouse was in the middle of the ocean, the wispy lights are the ocean, and then that lighthouse just stays, and it's there. And you could focus on the lighthouse, or you could focus on the water, and whatever you focus on becomes whatever the experience is for me.
And this is understood to be something about how stuff happens in life, and it's kind of similar to what we're talking about here, and like I can't move back, just like whatever action potentials can't reverse.
Yeah.
That's somehow part of all of it.
Yes, like that was the trigger for that.
Okay. And I want to be careful because we're talking kind of fairly confidently about all of this, but I also want to be sensitive to, I've heard you say a lot, like maybe it's like this or it's probably like this. And and so I just want you to know that and probably we are being sensitive to that and not, and recognizing that this is day one and recognizing that we might not be totally sure about all of this.
Right.
And on top of or simultaneously or a different layer or whatever, I understood you to be saying that there is a dialogue.
Yeah, on top of the visual experience, as the visual experience is occurring, there is a dialogue also occurring.
And what exactly do you mean by a dialogue?
Like when my voice, my inner voice is talking.
And what is your inner voice saying?
It is the thing that is saying the thing I said, like, can't go back in time. You know, look at how things work inside of you on a micro level and apply that to your outside life on a macro level. Like that's what this voice is telling me to. That sounds so weird and detached, but like that's what my inner voice is connecting to me, is relaying to me, and with what I'm learning in class to what I'm applying to my life.
So does that mean that I hear my inner voice saying, quote, you can't go back in time. This is just like action potentials. That's a long dialogue or monologue or whatever it is that we're talking about.
But it doesn't, it's long in that it's like many words and like a whole sentence, but it's like maybe the words come after the feeling. You know, like I already felt it, I already know that that's what's occurring, and then this other aspect of me has to understand it further, so then I apply words to it. And then I have this large dialogue happening right after that.
So the question is, at the
Yeah.
moment of the beep,
Yes.
are the words happening?
It's hard to say because I feel like all of it happens at once. And then, but when you get to the nitty gritty, I would say that the first thing that happens, specifically at the moment of the beep, I would say the beep happened in the middle of all of that. Like, came right at the time that I was having the visualization and the dialogue was occurring.
So about the visual aspect,
Yeah.
it seemed like we were sort of confident in saying, this is what I was seeing. I was
Yeah.
seeing the swirly stuff with the rectangle stuff and whatever.
Yeah.
About the words, the dialogue stuff,
Mhm.
I haven't yet heard exactly what the words were.
Mhm.
I've heard what the gist of the words were.
Right.
It's, I can't go back and whatever.
Yeah.
But
Like, what do you mean with the words were? Like, was it exactly what I was telling myself? The exact words? Or,
If there were specific words
Yeah.
ongoing at the moment of the beep, we'd be interested in knowing what those
Okay.
specific words were.
I
And I
can
want
read
to.
to you what I wrote, because it was right at that beat that I wrote it down. And this would probably be the closest representation. Do you want me to read that?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so funny that a neuron during a nerve impulse, you can't go backwards when in absolute refractory period like life, you can't go backwards, can't take back actions. You're always designing new pathways, whether it is under your control or not. You're a designed creature, designing moments and experience with yourself and others. So it's like I was relating that I am designing my insides, that sounds weird, my neurons are creating these situations within themselves where they're firing and creating these pathways, and that's generating actions in me, behavior in me that is also creating pathways.
Mhm.
And all those things are occurring and they're happening going forward.
Mhm.
Like, it's never something that you can just reverse. Like, once that pathway is made, whether it be in your neurons or in your real life, you're generating this path. And that's what I was connecting from, what I was learning and into myself, and that's kind of like what the voice was saying in that moment, to add that dialogue into the white light and shadowy thingy, the visualization. So yeah, does that make sense?
Well, I also want to make sure I'm not
Yeah.
assuming that I know what you mean by inner voice.
Okay.
Because we use that phrase and it's
Okay.
a little tricky. So, some people, when they say I hear my inner voice, literally mean there is a voice with vocal characteristics like
Yes.
volume and tone and all these things,
Mhm.
just as if I had been hearing someone talk to me in the real world.
That's exactly how I experience it.
That's how you experience
Yeah.
it.
It is my voice specifically, and it has a lot of confidence, and it's very matter of fact, and this is what it is, and take it. Like, that's like how it feels. And it's my voice, always my voice. It's never another voice. It's always in my same tone, my same pitch. Yeah.
And it is, as best we can say, that voice, that inner voice is saying something. I'm hearing that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not quite sure what the specific words are. Is that fair to say? That get caught by the moment of the beep.
Yeah, I guess it's hard to really. I mean, I guess this what I read was the closest I could get to
Mhm.
what I was hearing in my mind with my inner voice.
Mm-hmm.
My inner voice as in me, and yeah, that's the closest I can get to
Mhm.
exactly what it was saying.
And that was fairly long. And the moment of the beep that we're interested in is pretty small by
Right.
contrast. So
Mhm.
you probably can't answer this today, and it's
Mhm.
day one, but is all of that present, some of that present, one word of that present?
So
I don't know, I'll pay attention next time.
Right. I guess I'll pay more attention next time. But if I think about it, in the moment of the beep, it's, what comes first is the feeling of what I'm sensing. And then I add in the dialogue to further break down what I'm sensing. And then the dialogue turns into this whole long thing.
Mhm.
So in that exact moment, am I having this experience first? No, I think that comes after, as I'm analyzing what I'm feeling, after getting that one particular connection. It starts with a very fast feeling, a very, like, it's just a sense of something. And then I go into that sense, and then I build it into this scene, and then I have the visual, and then I have the dialogue, and then I carry that around all day long. So
Okay.
that's where I'm at with that.
Yeah.
So our task
Yeah.
is to apprehend that, and if we could get inside your body and feel it the way you feel it, we would be doing that,
Okay.
which we can't.
Mhm.
So we have to do it through this really imperfect medium of discussion.
Mhm.
And so I have heard
Mhm.
several different, well, I guess I should say, I could interpret what you have said in several different ways, and I don't know the answer, which is the best interpretation, and I'm actually pretty sure you don't know which is the best interpretation either, because we haven't really gotten into it.
Yeah.
But, so I think it's possible that I had this feeling, and then I zoomed in on it, and then I started talking to myself, and I said the 30-second long or minute long dialogue about what it was that I was talking about, and the beep happened somewhere in there, but I didn't know I was supposed to be paying attention to that, and so I can't tell you exactly what that was like. I think that's one possible scenario.
Mhm.
And another possible scenario is that it was a feeling that was present really at the moment of the beep, and then the beep happens, and then I gotta think about what I'm gonna tell these guys about it, and then I come up with these visualizations and the monologue or dialogue, or whichever word you use about that, but that's really sort of back over here that I import or export or refer back to this particular moment.
Mhm.
I don't know, and there's doubtless other possibilities, maybe quite different from either one of those possibilities.
Mhm.
That's what's interesting, is to try to get that as right as we can get it. And that this is a joint effort,
Mhm.
hopefully, that we're trying to zero in on what that experience is like. And either one or any of the other possibilities is equally interesting. The one that's the most interesting is the one that was actually going on with you. And maybe this method isn't possible for you. Maybe it's, I'm making a distinction which just doesn't apply to you. Then you're going to have to tell me how to recalibrate my questioning so as that it rests easily on what your experience is like. That's the
Yeah.
dance in which we're trying to
I think the
refine.
one thing I could say that I'm realizing that, I will apply for the next beeps is, with my experiences, I'm realizing that they do start out with a feeling. And then after the feeling is when I pile up all these other aspects to, like, digest the feeling, sort of, And I think what you said, the two scenarios you stated, and trying to understand what my experience is or what's happening there, I think probably both of them are correct in some way. And I just have to find a better way for when the beep occurs to analyze deeper. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, we'll see. Alex said that this meeting is sort of like a first draft, and everything that you say is sort of a first draft. And so you're going to try to do this, and that's a first draft of what it is that you're going to try to do. But maybe when it comes time to the second draft, to make the second draft, you'll say, well, what I said back there in the first draft isn't really true, because I'm not really going to try to do that. And that's what a good writer does. A good writer doesn't just polish the first draft. A good writer sometimes throws away the first draft. Or sometimes he polishes the first draft. That either what the object of our joint effort is to try to grasp something interesting, important, and faithful to your experience.
Yeah.
So what time do you suppose it is here?
I don't know, 40?
We've been there for 57.
Oh,
So I would say we should stop. We
Yeah.
should, I'm guessing that we have a.
we usually stop early on day one too.
Yeah.
We have a lot of these discussions and,
Okay.
yeah, that's the norm.
And I wouldn't say this is early, we've been at this for 57 minutes, I think.
Well, early in terms of we don't get to all the beeps.
Oh, to get to all
I
the
don't mean
beeps,
early in
that's-
terms of
that's-
time,
Yeah.
That's
just the
right.
beeps themselves.
The first day, well, all days, all sampling days are in part, in important part, an exercise for trying to refine our ability to do what it is that we're trying to do for the next time. On the first day, that's mostly that. And the second day, it's sort of half, well, get what your experience is, and half of refinement. And the third day, maybe it's 3/4 what your experience is and 1/4 refinement or something like that. Or maybe it's all refinement all the way down. That's what makes this interesting, really.
And on that note, you're doing exactly what you should be doing, and you're doing great, by as far as I'm concerned.
Me too.
Okay.
This is exactly what day one looks like. And I would add that if, I think you should know, we would be equally delighted to find that you do have this feeling narrative thing, and we'd be equally delighted to find that that never shows up. There's never a feeling, there's never whatever. We really don't have a preference, and we don't want you to go looking for that, and we're not
Right.
looking for that or anything particular.
Okay.
So, do you have questions or comments or whatever now that we've heard an hour of our interrogation?
No, I found it interesting going into it for myself because I really had to really think about what goes into me, you know,
Mhm.
in those really small seconds of life,
Yeah.
you know. I guess the question is, what happens next?
Same thing, only better.
Okay. So do we repeat this next week, and like I repeat this whole thing Wednesday and come back Thursday, or different 2 days? Like, how does that?
That's for us to
We're
decide.
about, let's figure out when we can meet next, and then
Okay.
we would like you to wear the beeper in the 24-hour period ahead of that.
Yeah. So I could wear the beeper Monday and come see you guys on Tuesday, or we could stick to this kind of thing where I wear it again Wednesday and see you on Thursday.
I am not on campus Tuesdays and Wednesdays, but I could
Okay.
do the same time again on Thursday or
Okay.
9:30 if you want.
Or Monday, you could
Or
wear the beeper
Monday,
on
yep.
Sunday. and-
I'm also here on Monday.
So Monday I have class at 10, and then I have class at 1. So that might be hard to fit in. Oh, and on Monday I have an exam, so let's just throw that out.
Okay.
So I could do Wednesday wear the beeper, Tuesday or Thursday come back to you guys at 9 or 9:30, whichever time. Whichever.
Okay.
9
That
or
works for
9.
me.
Yeah. You want to
Whichever.
do 9:30?
Sure.